Hidden in this garage is a survivor of the Japanese Speed Wars, which it held the title for 6 years straight of the fastest production motorcycle in the world. And it's about time we rescue it and put it back on the road. Let's get it out of the garage, see what we're working with. This is a 1996 Kawasaki ZX-11. What even makes the ZX-11 special? Well, it traces its history back to the first member of the Ninja sportbike family, arguably the most iconic, the coolest, and innovative bikes ever made, the GPZ 900R. It was the first water-cooled, 16-valve, dual-overhead cam, inline-4 motorcycle with a fully aerodynamic fairing as standard equipment, and the first to reach over 150 miles an hour with a top speed of 151. Through the rest of the 80s, the Big Four battled it out with incremental gains, and then in 1990, Kawasaki released the ZX-11. Its 1052cc inline-4 engine featured a fully functional ram air intake system. That means the more air you could cram into this, the faster you could go. The ZX-11 held the title of the fastest production motorcycle in the world for 6 years, the longest reign of any during the Speed Wars, and it would take until 1996 for Honda's CBR 1100XX Super Blackbird to beat it out by just 2 miles an hour. By then in 1999, the gentleman's agreement had already come about, with the Hayabusa being released as well in that same year, and bikes were limited to 186 miles an hour. Then, just 2 years later, the ZX-11 ended production. Let's go back in time and rescue this one. And it's been sitting here for about 3 years. And this is where I have to admit that we're actually going to be saving it from ourselves, because my brother and I left it here 3 years ago when we moved out. And unfortunately, we didn't do anything fun with it. In 7 years of ownership, we've only put 700 miles on it. So that's what this video is going to be. We're going to actually get this thing out on the road and be able to use this, because we've never actually used it. Let's get started. All right, sitting 3 years. Battery dead, of course. Oh, clutch is nothing. Oh, there we go. Out in the sun, it's dusty and dirty, but underneath the filth, the candy wine red really pops. All right, give this baby the seal of approval. It's not going anywhere. Next time you see it, it'll be in the garage. All right, absolute tragedy just struck. Not even 2 minutes of driving, and it fell. And this is the scuff. That's it that I can tell for now, but we gotta get going. A lot of work. Heavy. Here's a quick plan on what we need to address before we can take it out on the road. Most important that will stop us from running are the battery is dead, the carbs need cleaning, the clutch builds no pressure, and we need to fix the oil leak. The oil leak is concerning because it seems to be a continuous drip, and there is no oil in the sight glass, which is definitely suboptimal. After that, we can start tackling some basic maintenance: oil, filter change, coolant flush, brake fluid flush. Anything else, the factory service manual has a very nice list of everything to check, so we'll consider looking at that. This list will definitely get longer as we find more issues, but let's go ahead and get started. To access the battery and carburetors, everything on top of the bike needs to come off. We'll be removing the rear inner fairing later, but removing all the screws makes it easier to not damage it when lifting out the fuel tank. There are 4 easily accessible bolts that hold down the fuel tank, 2 at the top and then 2 at the bottom. Alright, this may be full of gas. There is a connector for the fuel level sensor. There we go. With the fuel tank out of the way, we now have access to the battery. Let's keep going to access the carburetors, and to do that, we need to remove the airbox. We need to pull this, it's called the inner rear fairing. That's what the service manual calls it, and it is very fragile. Okay. And it comes out like that. Now we can blast out all the airbox bolts and remove the cover to find even more bolts. I tried to pick it up and remember that there are even more hidden bolts, and I couldn't quite reach it with the tools that I had on hand, so I'll deal with that later. So let's pivot to continue disassembly and try and source this oil leak. Alright, next we can go ahead and remove the lower fairing. Same ordeal on the other side, just undo all the bolts and carefully try not to crack it. There is a bolt all the way down at the bottom, all the way across here, and then in the corners. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so I'm not seeing anything definitive besides there's a shit ton of oil everywhere. Obviously, the fairings were acting as a funnel, so where the drip is does not mean that that's where the leak is. There's just so much oil. Worst case scenario is it's like the oil pan. I don't think it's an engine out. I think the oil pan can be accessed once the headers are out. You know, for fun, let's see how little oil is left in there. Oh, Jesus, who put that on? What previous owner put that on? Alright, big reveal. Ah, there's oil in there. It's not all gone. I don't see any flakes. We'll pull the filter next. And we'll make sure that there's no engine damage before I go any further. Of course, I didn't have gloves to put on. Can't really see much from here, so let's take it over to the bench and cut it open to make sure it's clean. It is so over. Tell me it's supposed to look like that. This finding is a huge blow to us because 6 years ago we completely stripped apart the bike, removed the engine, split the case, and installed a set of undercut gears meant for drag racing to rebuild the transmission. But now, it seems like we're going to have to redo all of that work. Well, it's terminal. It's definitely metal in the oil filter, and the last time this bike ran, it ran great, which is why I was so convinced it was going to be easy to get this thing on the road, which now it's turned out to be a whole ordeal. Yeah, and of course, you know, to touch on it, last time this thing ran, it ran awesome, didn't make any noise, didn't do anything weird, didn't burn any oil, it was fine. And the oil looked fine. I didn't really see like flakes, but yeah, there's some shit in that oil filter, and it's not good. The only thing I can think of is that the failure is pretty early and it hasn't been able to make any noise yet. So maybe it's just a bearing that's failed and not like a rod that's ready to be sent through the block, or, you know, haven't damaged the crankshaft or anything. Well, I don't know. What do you guys want to see? Do you guys want to see a full rebuild on this? Because it's going to be a lot of effort, it's going to be a lot of work, but I need you guys to subscribe to if you guys want to see something like that. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. And I'm more into dual sports now, not street bikes. So, it is what it is. Yeah. Thanks for watching. and see you next time.